Hello, hello. Welcome to the Green Nurse Podcast, where we bring hope and inspiration for growth and healing. We're here to change the dialogue and stigma around what it means to feel good or be high. Did I say the word high? Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. You deserve to feel good. I deserve to feel good. We all deserve to feel good. And here is a little clip about what we do in the cannabis space as nurses. And then we'll get into our very powerful interview today.
Change the paradigm of healthcare.
The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I'm the founder of Holistic Caring. We're based here in California, and we do educational programs and case management for patients on how to use cannabis therapeutically as a medicine.
We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high, hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing.
As the founder of Holistic Caring, I basically oversee the whole ship, and what we're doing is progressive education.
Cannabis actually supports all 11 organ systems, our immune system, and all the neurotransmitter signaling systems that give messages to tell our body to either do something or not do something. Because the plant was prohibited, it prevented health professionals, doctors and nurses from learning about cannabis as medicine.
I want to change the paradigm of healthcare and us paving the way into a new vanguard of medicine.
It's about education, it's about empowerment, it's about teaching people how to feel good, bridging the gap from what they're not getting from traditional medicine, utilizing different plant medicines, adaptogens, tips, tricks, hugs, and nugs of information to support and nourish the most important system in our body.
And it's a lot of soul work, a lot of love, a lot of discipline, and meditation. I'm using my life work as a testimony to others to learn how they can be their own hero and then go help heal the world.
And we are, as nurses, the game changers.
Oh, there you go. Growing in health, growing in cannabis. Hello, everyone. My name is Sherry Mack, and I'm the Vice President of Nursing and co-founder of Holistic Caring and the Green Nurse. And I am very grateful to be here today. I am a cannabis nurse, cannabis patient, advocate, activist, and a very passionate podcaster here to change the paradigm of healthcare. And I'm really excited to announce that this is my 7th year podcasting The Green Nurse, Living Your Best Life. I started podcasting in 2018 when the National Council State Boards of Nursing came out with a call to action that all nurses must have 6 essential areas of knowledge when it comes to cannabis as medicine. I started podcasting to share compelling stories of healing and to decrease stigma, since I too use cannabis as medicine. But before we get started on our very exciting show today, we do have a message from our sponsors at Bloom Hemp. And I'm going to pull up a handy dandy photo of Bloom Hemp and let you know all about this company. So Bloom Hemp is a woman and nurse owned national CBD, hemp CBD supplier, leading with quality, safety, value, and patient-centered care. Bloom Hemp products are USDA organic CBD grown in the mountains of Colorado and tested for purity, potency, cannabinoid, and terpene profiles. Bloom Hemp is proud to offer a free nurse line, 970-404-HOPE. I will put that up in a minute to answer questions, explain how and why CBD works in the body. And if you're new to CBD, actually Bloom Hemp has an evergreen code, Green Nurse, for 10% off and free shipping. Very exciting stuff. All right. Thank you, Bloom Hemp, for sponsoring the show. We are forever grateful, and we are going to get into this amazing show today. So I'm not sure if y'all know this, but cannabis nursing, yes, cannabis nursing is a real thing, has been recognized as a specialty, and nurses are truly making an impact on advocating for the safe use safe therapeutic use of cannabis. And today we have a remarkable guest on who will be sharing her story as a nurse entrepreneur and a podcaster in the cannabis arena. I'd like to welcome Molly Henderson, AKA the Kush Nurse, Registered Nurse, Educator, and her podcast, Conversations with Kush, which I'm going to share with you because I was on it. Very exciting. So for over 22 years, Molly has devoted herself to nursing, specializing in labor and delivery, high-risk OB, and emergency medicine. Her passion for teaching blossomed as she provided prenatal education to expectant parents. Molly discovered cannabis during the COVID pandemic, a time when the demands of her work and the world at large felt very overwhelming. Mindful of respiratory concerns, she began creating her own edibles and sharing them with friends. This led her to an internship at a local hemp CBD company where she delved deeper into the industry. Her journey eventually led her to the American Cannabis Nurses Association, a place she knew was meant for her. At the American Cannabis Nurses Association conference, she connected with remarkable nurses who were driving advancements in education, research, policy, plant and patient advocacy, and the destigmatization of cannabis. Molly's goal is to elevate cannabis nursing as a respected profession to enhance patient care. She takes pride in advocating for specific groups like healthcare professionals, veterans, and women at every stage of life. Conversations with Kush podcast is Molly's show. Molly has been a very passionate advocate for medicinal cannabis and the legalization effort in general. This show is an amplification of what she's been doing for years, educating Minnesotans and beyond on the magic of medical cannabis. Molly and her guests will be a stellar resource for all things cannabis, and her goal for Conversations with Kush is to be a source of useful and reliable information, as well as a place where members of the cannabis community can meet and help grow our vibrant community. Welcome to the show, Molly.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sherry. What a beautiful introduction. I'm honored. It's a pleasure to be here tonight with you. And it was incredible having you on my own show too when you visited Minnesota. So
yeah, it was my first time in Minnesota, and it was really, really fun to visit the dispensary. It's called the Rec Dispensary that was there.
yes,
And you'll
the rec
tell
center.
everyone about Minnesota and how they do things there. But it reminded me of the olden days when I was in Massachusetts and cannabis was just starting to evolve and having these nice pop-ups. And we would go and we would record and community would come together. And there was a sharing of cannabis and a sharing of education and just knowledge and love and community. And it was really a beautiful experience to have. And I really appreciate you inviting me.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great experience. I think, especially in our state, we get a lot of exposure here in what we call the Twin Cities. So Minneapolis and St. Paul were like the big booming cities. But I think, places in Rochester where the conference was don't always get as much exposure. So I think it's really important to highlight what people in the outer state are doing as well, too. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, we all don't wake up one day and say, hey, I'm going to be a cannabis nurse, or hey, I'm going to start a cannabis podcast. There's usually a story. And specifically, you were talking, before we came on, I've been at the podcast thing for a long time, and it can be really hard. And so there is a passion and there is something there for you. And I want our audience to know about Molly, the Kush RN, and what brought you to cannabis and what made you decide to start podcasting.
Thank you. I came to cannabis during COVID. I had been kind of like a recreational cannabis user growing up. From the time I was like 13. I would, smoke marijuana, a couple of times a year, like on Mother's Day, my favorite day to smoke cannabis.
Right.
But I was a responsible mother and a wife and a nurse. And I thought, if one of the kids gets sick and has to go to the hospital, like, my husband was an everyday user. I said, one of us has to be sober. So, I was kind of the person that, just did not partake. And then during COVID, I think, as a bedside nurse, I was struggling really bad. I was trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do if I can't work at the bedside anymore? Because I was starting to feel like, I don't know if I can do this, like.
So you're taking care of COVID patients?
Not necessarily like to taking care of the patients, like the care didn't change for me. It was all of the fear surrounding things. And it was just like that just compounded like the already arduous task of like helping a woman deliver their baby or, helping someone that's coming in with a heart attack in the emergency department. In the time I worked in labor and delivery. But there when you're a bedside nurse, you take on so much, you absorb so much of the energy of in the room, and I think with all of the flurry of fear and the unknown going on around COVID, I was just like, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. So I was like, looking for other things to do. I met someone that was into cannabis and started consuming again, just kind of here and there. And then that person suggested, have you ever thought about making your own edibles? And I was like, no, I haven't actually. So I researched it and bought a magic butter machine and started making gummies and all kinds of treats and really just started giving them out to people like, hey, I made these gummies. And people were like, wow, this really helps me. And, again, as you mentioned, I did want to be mindful about smoking. I mean, I'm more of a smoker now, but that's not how I kind of really fell in love with cannabis. It was through consumables. So, yeah.
It's well, that's interesting because it's so funny because I was introduced to cannabis as a medicine from a 70-year-old nurse.
Yeah.
She brought me herb from her garden. She was a nurse, she was retired, and I was sick and suffering. And it was really interesting because I'm trying to think too, I'm thinking if I had been introduced to it another way, I'm not sure I would have had the results. So it's just, I think that we're
Sure.
introduced to it in a way that makes sense for us. It's almost like it's
Yeah.
preordained that, right? That
Yeah.
she would bring it to me. She was a mentor of mine when it came to energy healing. So we were Reiki practitioners, reconnective healing practitioners, and she knew that I was sick. And she knew that I wasn't answering her calls or doing anything at all, to be quite honest. I was
Yeah.
really sick. And so when she came to my house and brought me cannabis, she brought me something from her garden, and it was from her heart that she had grown,
Right.
she had made, and she literally had that raw, transparent, open conversation with me saying, Sherry, get with the program. Cannabis has been legal in Massachusetts since 2012. It is now, 2014. And you're sick and you're suffering and you're dying. You have nothing to lose. And she was right. But I didn't understand it, but I didn't understand cannabis as medicine because we were never taught it was medicine. We were taught it was recreation and never understood the endocannabinoid system because it's not taught in nursing school. So It was really, and so I'm sure, very similar to you, once I went down that rabbit hole, there's no going back. You can't unlearn what you learn, and you can't unexperience healing. Like once you have the healing experience, it's with you. And that feeling, I can remember it. I can remember the day that I took those 3 puffs and I felt like my head cracked open and consciousness poured in. And it was a game changer.
It gets down to a soul level, like it really gets down to your soul. And I am someone that really appreciates now stacking my medication. So I enjoy consumables and topicals and smoking too. So I kind of curate my own experience through that. And, it's been nice getting to know her.
Well, Molly, for
Honestly.
the new viewers, and you're more than capable of educating, let them know what stacking is.
Yeah, so just like, using different forms of cannabis. So like a consumable would be like, I know a person that makes their own pills. So they incorporate RSO with MTC oil and put those in capsules, or you can make edibles. So it would be like taking an edible and then maybe putting on like a topical if you have like a shoulder pain, or taking an edible and maybe like taking a quick puff of a vaporizer or a joint that will give you that kind of immediate high so that you can like get your day going. But then you'll have that underneath, that consumable that will kind of keep you in a good space, for a longer period of time. So
Yeah. So one of my favorite
Yeah.
ways to stack is at bedtime. You think about it, right? So we
Yep.
have difficulty falling asleep, difficulty staying asleep, waking up with nightmares, maybe getting up in the middle of the night and having a hard time going back to sleep. And so you think the inhalation is quick acting, you take the puff,
Yep.
can help you sink into the relaxation response. You take the tincture that's going to kick in once the puff wears off, and then the edible is going to kick in a little bit later for that longer acting sleep. So when I stack, I love, and then the topical at bedtime for that total body relaxation. And I love the topicals, being able to smell them, the
Me
aromatherapy.
too.
It's like a way of life. It's a whole experience when you are
Def-
stacking, and you're doing it for the right reasons, and it can keep the cost low, right? If you're
yeah, for
stacking
sure.
products, small doses, right?
That's what I tell to people that like I see that are everyday smokers. It's like, if you want to consider not spending as much money on cannabis, you should maybe look at some other options.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely one way that you can keep your costs down.
Yeah. So let's go back to, so here you are, you're in COVID,
Yeah. So during COVID, so I
you're making
started
edibles.
like trying making my edibles, yeah, giving all away to all my friends. Everyone's feeling good. Um, and then I found the ACNA,
Yeah.
and that was a game changer for me. I was like, wow, there's women out here, or men and women out here, that are like me, that are interested in cannabis and really know a lot about cannabis. And so they're utilizing all those nursing skills and like putting that towards cannabis and educating people and advocating for the plant. So that was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
I
ACNA,
also,
progressive organization. They just, and specifically, endorsing specific products. They have sponsorship, they have membership for advocacy, education, collaboration, research, and policy development. Really, really great community. They were part of the reason why the American Nurses Association recognized cannabis as a nursing specialty, which is really interesting.
yes.
So for the new viewers out there, the American Nurses Association is the nursing association which represents 5 million nurses. And they recently, in September 27th, 2023, actually made an announcement that they recognize cannabis nursing as a specialty. And that was part in conjunction with the help of American Cannabis Nurses Association and a lot of other nurses that have been doing this groundwork in the game, truly making a difference. And what was just published literally a month ago was the scope and standards. And the scope and standards there's 18 standards of care that nurses must adhere to. So we have the National Council State Boards of Nursing that has the 6 essential areas of knowledge. Then we have the scope and standards, which has 18 standards of nursing. And so we're looking, as cannabis nursing being a specialty, nurses will be able to sit and take an exam and get board certified in cannabis nursing. That is a huge, huge undertaking, and really, a lot of advocacy and activism, and nurses stepping outside the box and out of their comfort zone and speaking up and having a voice in the space for consumers. And many of the nurses are also like yourself, you found cannabis because you found it to be helpful.
Yeah.
To be helpful to
Yeah.
suffering and
Not
improve.
just for me, I mean, for so many of the people that I was working with. I think a big deal right now that people are starting to recognize is this healthcare post-traumatic stress disorder, right? We're getting, we're at the bedside, we're absorbing all these things every day, we're moving about our day, we're sacrificing time with our families, we're sacrificing relationships with our spouses, with our parents, with our children. So there's a lot that goes into that. And that's one of the things that I really want to kind of bring to the forefront. And hats off to the people at the ACNA. That was a lot of work, a lot of work.
Yeah.
And it's super important to elevate our profession and to elevate the profession of nursing. Nurses have been for decades, one of the most recognized and trusted professions, right? So we're out here to educate the people. And to me, it always feels so sad how healthcare is come down to like this algorithm and, this flow sheet that we go through. And they've kind of dumbed things down. And for the ACNA to come out with those things about our scope and our standards of practice, like that's really important. So now we can really get back into the practice of nursing and helping people guide people through their cannabis journeys.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah, the therapeutic use of cannabis, according to the American Cannabis Nurses Association, is the use of cannabis products for medicinal, wellness, and healing purposes. It is personal and subjective to each consumer, with objective criteria being improvement in one of the 5 health domains: biological, spiritual, social, mental, and emotional, without negatively impacting any of the other domains. So in other words, even recreational cannabis could be therapeutic cannabis. And so what we do is we
absolutely.
teach safe consumption, right? Everyone deserves to feel good, right? Everyone deserves.
Absolutely.
And and that's what a lot of my conversations today has been around that whole topic about how we as human beings are hardwired to seek existential states where people seek to alter their consciousness. It's normal. And
Absolutely.
and why shouldn't it be? Right? Because you can't solve a problem when you're in the problem. Sometimes you need to get out of the problem. You need to sink into the relaxation response. And when we teach on the endocannabinoid system signals the fight or flight response and the relaxation response. The fight or flight response, we cannot help. It just happens regardless.
Right.
Relaxation response requires us to be conscious and to have awareness so we can sink into that. And we need tools to be able to get back to homeostasis, to get out of the fight or flight response. Cannabis is one of those tools. And as we know, cannabis pairs very, very nicely with other health and wellness activities. Some of my best prayers, my best meditation, my best therapy sessions with my psychiatrist have been under the influence of cannabis.
Absolutely. Well, even think about, like, I've had people on my show that are athletes, and they say, like, it's really essential that they smoke before they go work out. It really helps with that mind body connection. Or, I have people that pair it with food or with music. Like, those are all things that can touch our spirit. And not to get too far into the spiritual realm, but I'm a firm believer that we all come to the earth to figure out what our purpose is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think for cannabis, that has been a big conduit for me to figure out what I'm supposed to do here. So
Yes, I
I'm
truly
grateful.
I believe that as well. I presented for the
Yeah.
American Cannabis Nurses Association and Cannabis Nurses Network a few years ago. And one of my topics was spirituality is the root of cannabis care. And here's the reason why, right? You think about in conventional care, we're focused on what? Body parts, symptoms, pills, procedures, appointments,
Right.
right? Whatever, just pills, procedures. It's not humanistic, but rarely do we ever get to mental emotional health unless someone is suffering. And never
Right.
do we get to someone's spirit unless they're dying. So when
Right.
cannabis care, it starts with the human experience. The essence of nursing is human caring for the entire human experience. And cannabis allows that on so many different levels. Cannabis is a conduit to mind, body, spirit, to connection. Spirituality is the root of cannabis care, right? And then the plant goes towards the light. And that's what we do is we seek to the light and the lightness of being that cannabis can bring by bringing on that relaxation response that we all crave. And it's just really fine tuning and teaching people how to use it safely and appropriately.
Yeah, I always say that even the everyday recreational person that's using cannabis, like, you're a medical patient. You don't know it, but you're treating your own set of symptoms with cannabis, through the use of cannabis. So that makes you a medical patient in my eyes.
Yeah.
Even if you're not accessing medical dosing or, getting
Yeah.
yours from a dispensary that has, medical cannabis specifically, like, you're still a medical patient.
Yeah. Well, one of my biggest aha moments was during COVID. When I was back in Massachusetts, I was working with nurse practitioners and we were doing medical cards as well as consulting and education. And in Massachusetts, for a period of time, they shut down the adult use dispensaries, but kept the recreational ones open. And so we saw a huge influx of people wanting to get their medical cards. The interesting thing, so a first-time medical card holder in our organization we don't just write the card. It's not about that. It's about the care that comes with the card. And so we do consulting. And so every first-time card holder needed to get a 1-hour consultation with one of our nurses. And it was very, very interesting to speak to these people. I would literally say 99.9% of them were true medical patients. But for one reason or another, they just didn't want to get their medical card. And, you know, when you really ask people, and the other interesting thing was they got a great deal. They said, you know what, I'm really glad that you forced me to have this consultation, because now I know some of the better products that I can be using, some better choices that I never even thought of, and how I can manage it and save money and make my own and blah, blah, blah. So it really it became very eye-opening that, you know, even recreational consumers, if you ask them, what do you get for this besides just getting high, you're going to find a reason, for sure.
Right. Well, and I think two things. So like, you know, for that everyday user, you can do, you know, take that opportunity to teach them about COAs and how terpenes can really play a factor in, you know, what they need to dial into. And so being able to recognize and identify which strains will work, which chemovars will work best for you is important. And then, you know, as the new people come in, I just always wanna, like, part of the podcast is really just breaking down the stigma of cannabis, right? Like there's a multitude of cannabinoids out there that you can use that are beneficial for health and wellness, that will not get you high, that are non-euphoric.
Right.
So, you know, I think that's always an entry point where we can just really do a lot of education and be like, hey, you have a fear of feeling high. Let me teach you about what you can use that is not going to give you that effect. So.
Yeah. And that's why we actually too, we also have our network that's off of social media. I just put it in the comments below. So for people that are new, you can join our free holistic caring network. It's run by nurses. It's run by our pharmacist. Her name is Jasmine Joy. She's amazing. And we have a free introductory to cannabis course. We have all of our webcasts, podcasts, clinical conversations are listed there. We have a lot of other courses as well, but we also have a free plant medicine support group that meets monthly. So people that are new to cannabis and even psychedelics, we want to educate on and to have a safe space for people to come to learn, you know, and in a place that it's private, they can reach out to us. It's just, it's critical. I mean, education is empowering, right?
Yeah.
The more you learn, and it's interesting, what I love is the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know.
Exactly.
There's always something to learn about this plant. It's ever evolving, ever growing, ever shifting and changing, and specifically at this age. Yes, this is leading science for sure. And nurses
I'm so glad about the rescheduling, and, you know, fingers crossed, maybe something could happen and there would actually be a descheduling, but like, you know, that's really going to open up the research. And just solidify that, you know, all the benefits of cannabis and what it can be used for.
People are, you know, reschedule is not good. I like to say glass half full, right? It is. I have to be optimistic because it's progress, and progress is what we need for sure moving forward. And the reason why they're putting it into Schedule 3 is because of Marinol. That's where Marinol sits, and that's my belief, anyways. But
well, it'll help the businesses too. So, you know,
businesses help research, create more jobs. You know, if once it becomes Schedule 3, guess what? Everyone has to learn it.
Exactly.
Right? You have to know it anyways, because Marinol is in a Schedule 3. They should already know about it, but they don't. But if, you know, it'll be very interesting to see what happens. And for the new viewers that are out there, you know, if you do, I recommend go to American Cannabis Nurses Association page on ACNA. There's a lot of posts on there about descheduling. ACNA made a statement about the rescheduling comment and how they're a proponent for descheduling. But of course, glass half full. We'll take Schedule 3 over Schedule 1 any day. But it's a really good page to get information on that. They're posting a lot of information, and so is Normal. Normal's posting a lot of information on that as well. So yeah, so it will be good. It's progress, and that's what we need. We need to keep pushing the needle forward to get for access for consumers and, you know, and nurses. And because I truly believe, you know, part of my story was I was on the other side of the bed back in 2012 and almost died. And I truly believe that if doctors and nurses, clinicians and pharmacists had any idea about the endocannabinoid system, I wouldn't have suffered so much, because all of the treatments, all of the therapies, all of the pills and procedures that were prescribed to me caused a downregulation of my endocannabinoid receptors and stopped my ability to produce my own. So nothing actually worked in my life. Even the holistic modalities didn't work until cannabis was introduced into my life. Once cannabis was introduced into my life, the cells started to communicate, things started to click, and the downstream effect I saw. Pain was the first thing to go, started to sleep better, autoimmune conditions, and then weaning off of 18 pharmaceuticals. Very, very powerful, you know, and I'm so forever grateful to that nurse, that 70-year-old nurse who came to my house and told me to get with the program. So I'm curious to know, for you personally, what is your relationship with cannabis spiritually, physically, mentally, and emotionally, and from this perspective?
Yeah, wow. It's it just for me, it really brings the veil down. It allows me to, I have really bad social anxiety. And sometimes if I smoke too much, that gets worse, right? So again, we come back to that stacking thing, or like using different forms of cannabis in different situations. So just really getting to know cannabis and developing my own relationship with her has been incredible. So I of course never consume before I go to work. I am probably consume maybe 4 to 5 times a week. Usually by consumable, I really appreciate, I know my grower. So I know where my cannabis comes from. I think that's really important that people kind of know that. Um, she again makes RSO that she mixes with MCT oil and capsulizes. So I use a ratio medicine. So something with high THC, so like 25 milligrams of THC and then 10 milligrams of CBD, that kind of balances that out. But she's also like a big proponent of, and I agree with her 100% that, people should be using CBD if they're able to, kind of as a vitamin, like a supplement, right? Yeah.
I'm a
Most people are deficient in their endocannabinoid system. So
Well,
we,
the
you know,
thing
we
that's
need
different
that.
with CBD is CBD works on over 70 targets in the body, right? So not
Okay.
only it indirectly impacts the CB1 and CB2 receptors, but it works on all of the other, like serotonin, dopamine, epinephrine, norepinephrine, hormonal signaling. So it works on all of these other signaling pathways. And its job is to help correct cell signaling, so our body's communicating and doing what it's supposed to do, giving messages to do
Exactly.
this, not do this, all at the exact same time. And so that's why I
Right.
love my umbrella image, imagining your body is an umbrella and the endocannabinoid system blankets on top of it, because we have receptors on all of the cell surfaces of all of our 11 organ systems. We have cannabinoid receptors at all of the neurotransmitter signaling junction sites. So when we make internal endogenous cannabinoids upon demand, and if we're not making enough of our own, well, guess what? Messages
We got
don't
to
get
put some in.
exactly out of luck.
Yeah. We got to put some in then,
We got to put
right?
some, yeah. And so CBD is really, and particularly for new people, new consumers.
Yes.
When I presented at American Nurses Association, particularly on chronic pain, and brought up a very, very conservative protocol, which, is very, very conservative. However, the protocol made sense because it's about starting with CBD. And you don't introduce THC until you're up to about 40 milligrams of CBD. And then you introduce a little bit of THC and then continue to titrate up. Right. And the goal was to take the least amount to get the most therapeutic results below the threshold of being impaired, unless your goal is euphoria. Then, of course, you don't need our help.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is really good. So what kind of education and training did you need to become a cannabis nurse? And how did that differ from the traditional nursing? And where did you get your
I
education from?
Thank you. I attempted a couple of times to go through Pacific College's program, their certificate program. The first time I was 3 days in and lost my dad.
Oh, wow.
And then the second time through, I went and tried immediately to go back in. I think it was just too soon. So I withdrew from that program and I ended up doing a program through an incredible woman named Ashley Wynn Grimes from Baltimore. Her program is called Cannabis Nursing Solutions, and part of it is kind of what your program does, Sherry, where it teaches you kind of some basic things that you need to know about cannabis, how to take a person through a consultation, and then how to structure your business, right? So I really appreciated that entrepreneurial part. And once I was tapped into that entrepreneurial side, I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm meant to be doing.
Right.
Like as nurses, we have all these tangible skills, right? And so if something's not working at the bedside, what do? We pull from our resources, and we learn on the go if we have to,
Yeah.
to educate our patient or to make our patient comfortable or whatever it may be. But once I kind of got tapped into that, and I saw it actually quite a bit with you and Elizabeth when I went to the conference, not last year, but the year before, the ACNA conference. I was like, whoa, look at these dynamic women. Like, they're so incredible. Here they have this whole program and they're just out there selling it and trying to, recruit more people into our profession. So
Yeah.
that was a real turn on for me, becoming an entrepreneur.
Yeah, being an
So
entrepreneur is definitely it's a calling, and
it is,
cannabis is
yeah.
a calling. That's my mentor is cannabis. When I have a hard decision to make, I sit in prayer and I literally say,
Exactly.
"What would cannabis do?" Right?
Exactly.
Right? 'Cause, yeah, but entrepreneurship isn't for the faint of heart, and
It isn't.
it's very different too than conventional nursing, because
Mhm.
we got to think about when you're a conventional nurse, you go to school, you get trained, you get interviewed for a job, there's a preceptor, there's a manual, and you start your job. When you start in
Right.
cannabis nursing, you're it.
Yeah, there's no one there. Yeah,
There's no one
you
there.
have to really, and you have to do that continuous education, right? So
Yes.
I've gone and continue to seek things out like Cannabis Public School with Mo Smith out in San
Nice.
Francisco, and just reading Bonnie Goldstein's book, like just start at the basics.
Yeah.
Reading Carrie Cadeau's book, start at the basics and just kind of educated myself, and it's been a journey, and I'm not exactly where I want to be, which is what kind of prompted me to do the podcast. And so I was feeling like, okay, well, maybe I'm not quite ready to educate patients, but that doesn't mean that I can't, tell people how great cannabis is and destigmatize cannabis. So
I
that
think
was kind
doing
of,
a podcast is a really good business move. And here's the
thank
reason
you.
why. A, it's getting your name out. B, you can interview whoever you want. So you can share,
Yeah,
same thing, you can interview patients, producers, growers, and your interviewing is going to teach you. I learned so much from my
it really
patient
has.
consultations and from the people that I interview. It's great move on your part,
Yeah,
for
thank
sure.
you.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned so much too about, how just kind of in the moment, like I did a patient interview with someone that was on my show kind of as an impromptu thing that had cancer. And, I was like, she was telling me about how she used cannabis, and I was like, well, what about topicals? Do you ever use topicals? Have you ever tried that? And she's like, no, I haven't really thought about it, so, you take those moments of where you see the gaps in education and you just educate right then and there. And I think that is usually the most impactful.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's been a great journey. And I really think it's important to showcase that people are out here as highly functioning adults, using cannabis on a probably everyday basis, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's really about, people just being able to tell their story and how cannabis has truly saved their life. If I had a dollar for every time I heard someone say cannabis saved my life, like, and even I kind of feel like that. Like,
Yeah.
of course, I was floundering and it was really my career that I was going down the tubes, but that's a big deal to me. I love working. I love what I do. I've been a nurse for, 25 years. So, this is my life's work. So to be able to shift and to pivot and to move into something where I'm like really tapped in now to something that I'm passionate about and I know really helps people, it's awesome.
That's awesome. That's so good. So
Yeah.
speaking about that, how do
Yeah.
you approach stigma of cannabis as you encounter them in your daily work? So how do you deal with stigma?
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard because, like especially here, like you guys in other places, you're a little bit more open about cannabis. It was funny because when you came on the show, I was like, "Are you comfortable talking about your own cannabis use?" And you're like, "Yeah, of course we are." And I was like, "Well, we're kind of new here, so like the group of cannabis nurses that we get together on a regular basis, we're still trepidatious about talking about our own use sometimes."
Yeah.
So I think that me personally, when someone brings up cannabis and, I say, well, cannabis is medicine, so this person is actually accessing their medication when they're using it. So let's try and, shift the way we think about them. This is not a drug. This is actual medicine.
Yep.
So I think that's one of the ways. And then, just when you find those gaps again, and you find an easy opportunity to educate, you just do it right there in the moment. And then people kind of look at you like, how do you know that stuff? And then you say, I'm a cannabis nurse.
Yeah. And then
So,
storytelling too, right?
yeah.
So I mean, which leads me to, my next question with you. Can you share a memorable patient story that highlights the impact of cannabis in your ability to work? Can you share one of your favorite stories?
Oh man, so many.
Which
I
one
kind
had
of
the most impact on you?
Sherry, honestly, I think my own story is the most impactful. I think without cannabis, I definitely would not be working as a nurse anymore. Um, I think I would be maybe disabled. I had really bad depression and anxiety, almost crippling sometimes, that kept me in bed for weeks at a time. Um, so to be able to access cannabis and to kind of help me come out of that and get through it, and especially to like transform myself into another person almost, becoming someone that was a protocol follower and an algorithm follower into someone that's now thinking outside the box and like learning how to structure a business and how to do branding and how to book guests and all the things. Like it was pretty transformative for me.
Yeah, that's good for you. That's awesome.
Another example I can really think of is with my mom. My mom has dementia.
Mm.
And so, she has really great days, where she's, happy and, things are going well for her and she's doing her little things. And then she has other times where she's really pissed off and she's not happy. And so, in those moments, I'll be like, Mom, do you want to try a little gummy or a little bonbon? And she'll be like, Yeah, I think I do.
Uh,
So, that's great.
yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
that was so good. It is really.
Yeah.
So let's see here. Also, too, let's talk a little bit about Minnesota because every
Yeah. Thank
state's
you.
different, right? So that's one of the things that we have here. How do you navigate the varying regulation and legal aspects of cannabis in your practice? How are you making strides to change that? So for the new viewers, tell us what's going on in Minnesota right now, legally.
So, newly, through legislation, what we have is that now physicians can prescribe cannabis to anyone that says, Hey, cannabis works for me. It works for my elbow pain. So, they can go directly to their primary care provider and say, Yep, I'm a cannabis user, and this is what it works, and this is how it helps me. And now they can get a medical card. Whereas before it had to be from like a certified person that could issue a card, you had to have a qualifying condition, all the things. So that access is really opened up now. And I think that, just goes to show that not only do we need to do this education for patients, but now we need to really do the education for providers
There you go.
because they're like, I don't, they probably had a short stint in medical school on cannabis. And again, they viewed it as a drug, not as medicine. So, and that's not every provider, of course. But I think that there is a huge opportunity for us to educate providers. So,
Yeah.
or to
Yeah.
be their resource.
Yep, and that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
We've got educational programs here at Holistic Caring. I just put a comment in the chat box down below for people that are interested, and I know that there's a 40% off sale this month, so I can
Nice.
put that in. Oop, I don't know what happened to my screen here. I'm big and you're little. Wrist to elbow. But yeah, so for our new viewers too. How do you approach educating patients and their families about the benefits and risks of treatments, of cannabis treatments and modalities?
Yeah, so again, I'm not a super big, I'm not into consulting that much, but I think where you have to just really meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
So I think, as far as especially the podcast goes, like really breaking down that stigma and showing like, oh, hey, my neighbor that's, a dentist uses
Right.
cannabis and she's successful and she seems to be doing okay. I think if we can just start breaking that stigma down and then kind of get people, those curious people, kind of meet them where they're at. Like what do you ask them? What's your fear of cannabis? Like, have you ever tried it? What was your experience? I think if you can just kind of get to those soul level questions, like why do you even care, like, or not care about cannabis, or if people are smoking,
Yeah.
like if you can kind of get
Well,
to
it's
those
interesting.
really,
If someone's really, 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 really opposed to it, there's a story why.
of course.
And it's our job to try to figure out why and try to, it's like
Yeah,
a myth. We're like detectives in myth
absolutely.
busting, and that's what
Yeah.
it requires is we become mythbusters.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, that's again one of the skills of nursing. We sit down with our patients, we listen to them, we get to those root causes, like what's preventing you from taking your blood pressure pills, or what's preventing you from trying to access cannabis, right? Like
Yeah.
we piece those things out and we really just help guide them through that journey and come up with tips and tricks, like you said, that tell me your nugs thing again, tips, tricks, nugs.
Tricks, hugs, and nugs.
Yeah, I love that.
Tricks, hugs, and nugs of information so you can use cannabis effectively and live your best life, right? For sure.
Exactly.
So how did you get involved in podcasting for the viewers?
Yeah, so I was feeling like, I'm not quite ready to do consulting, but this is something I can do. Like I'm new to the industry.
Yep.
I was really interested in people, but I'm kind of shy sometimes. So I thought, well, if I invite people to come to my space and talk about their cannabis use, then I have a captive audience as to getting to know them. And like my whole thing is just really sitting down with people and just really trying to have a genuine interaction with them and get to know them. And because I feel like we're going to all have that connection, like cannabis is going to connect us, right?
Yeah.
But again, we all have that story about how we came to it and how we utilize it and how it helps us. And so, the more people can hear those things, I think that's one way that we kind of chip away at those stigmas, and we don't see people then as somebody that's in their mom's basement, like smoking out of a bong and like eating hot pockets all day long. So we really
Long
need
and
to
hot
break
pockets.
those stigmas.
Absolutely. And so let's
Yeah.
go back to nursing as we start to wrap up. So
Yeah.
where do you see the field of cannabis nursing headed to in the next 5 to 10 years? And what changes would you like to see?
I'm
What's your
super excited. I'm super excited for it, actually. I think, especially here in Minnesota, I think there's a really great opportunity for us to be leaders in education when Dispo's open. So that's going to happen next summer. They've already released some early licensing, but I think the more that that dispensaries can highlight, like, yes, we have a cannabis nurse, or yes, we have this licensed medical professional that's going to educate you on your cannabis. I think that's a draw for people, especially new users and people that really are scared of having that that bad experience. I
Yeah.
think to have someone that can actually just like really Sherpa them through their experience is super wanted and beneficial. So I'm excited for that. I also excited for the education piece. I would love to see, as we go live with our specialty and get certified in our specialty, cannabis nurses working in a capacity like clinical dietitians, so like diabetes educators. So like a doctor now says, okay, you're going to use cannabis. I want to refer you to this clinical nurse specialist that can help take you through that process, get you started, take you on your journey. So I think that is one key that's going to be really crucial, and I hope to see it. And then also just in the advocacy realm, really want to see more advocacy groups popping up, hopefully in dispensaries or churches or wherever they can get together for people like veterans or helping professionals. Especially, I have a real passion for it. I feel like nurses, doctors, police, firefighters, EMTs, like we need to be able to access plant medicine in order to heal our spirits. Like the job that we do is arduous, and we do sacrifice a lot, and we need to be recognized as someone that also needs healing. So I'm really excited for those opportunities that could come up.
Yeah, I think that's great. Yeah, heal the healer for sure.
Heal the healer, yes.
Absolutely. And then finally, what advice would you give to other nurses or healthcare professionals who are interested in pursuing a career in cannabis nursing?
Do it. Just do it.
Well, you do it now because you're going to have to at some point in time. It's not going away. That's
exactly.
It's like either now or later.
and do it without abandon. Just do it scared. I think that's been the major takeaway for me is like, yeah, it is nerve-wracking to admit that I use cannabis and that I'm still a bedside nurse and that I'm out here promoting cannabis, but this is the medicine that works for me. It's the only medicine that I take on a regular basis. Like I don't, take any cardiac medications or, anything else. So I think, just doing it and not being afraid of doing it and really reframing your brain about how you think about cannabis. Because again, I was like you. Cannabis to me was a party drug, right? Cannabis was like, you go to the party, if someone brings weed and start smoking weed, like, it's going to be a great party. So I think we just need to redo that framing. And, you don't have to be a cannabis user in order to consider cannabis as medicine, but it probably helps.
Yeah, it does. And the reason why, and here's the reason why, you don't have to be a cannabis user to appreciate cannabinoid therapeutics, because cannabinoid therapeutics is much more than just cannabis, because we have an endocannabinoid system that is influenced by everything that we're doing or not doing in our lives. So we can modulate the endocannabinoid system and the endocannabinoid dome without cannabis using lifestyle as medicine. But people that have such a depleted system like I did when I came in sick and suffering, it didn't matter. All of those health and wellness activities didn't work because I had such a severe endocannabinoid deficiency. My receptors were off. I wasn't making enough of my own anandamide and 2-AG. And no matter whatever they tossed my way, I kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And it was cannabis that lit me up like a Christmas tree and allowed all of the therapies that didn't work to start to work for me. And that was the miracle, right?
Yeah, it's
3 puffs, and here I am today, pharmaceutical.
Thank goodness for cannabis. Really, I mean, it's life-changing, and again, I can't say that enough times. Like I don't think I would be where I am. Also, doing a podcast and still continuing to work at the bedside and still finding joy in my work, and a passion in cannabis. So I'm really grateful.
Okay, and so for our viewers, where can people find you?
Yeah, so I am Conversations with Kush. I can be found on YouTube, and I'm just getting loaded up onto some audio sites now too. So Spotify and Apple should be coming soon if it's not already in the works. So yeah.
I did put in the show notes your personal Facebook page as well.
Thank you.
And your page on YouTube. And if you do have a Conversations with Kush page, we can put that up as well after.
I have a Facebook page, a business page for that, but that's pretty new, Sherry. So even from when we spoke. So yeah.
Good. So I'm just going to say, so make sure we look for it, Facebook page. And it has been so awesome to have you on. Really, really thank you. It's been a while. I haven't seen another nurse podcaster in a while that's doing cannabis. So I'm really grateful that you're out there sharing the good news. For sure. I can't do this forever. So the more the merrier, and really happy that you're doing this and that I can support you in any way. So
thank you. And thank you for just being a beacon for me as an entrepreneur and as a podcaster too. I admire you and Elizabeth so much for what you've done for our profession, and I hope to just keep carrying that torch forward.
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And remember what it's all about. It's truly all about living your best life and helping others do the same. And we're going to end with one of my other favorite videos, all about hope, inspiration, growth, and healing. And we'll see you next Wednesday, July 10th at 12 p.m. for clinical conversations. Nurse Elizabeth and I are going to be doing therapeutic use of cannabis with legacy case studies.
We're here to educate and empower patients to make choices that are best for them. We're also here to decrease stigma around what it means to feel good and be high. Hence the H for hope, I for inspiration, G for growth, and H for healing. The Green Nurse is a holistic cannabis nurse that teaches on the endocannabinoid system and the safe utilization of cannabis and other progressive tools to help people reach a better quality of life.
I was cannabis agnostic for many, many years. And you know, the more research I did, the more I discovered that cannabis is this amazing medicine.
I was told that I had a 4-stage pancreatic cancer. The doctor really told me he couldn't do anything else. He gave me her name and she called me and she came to my house. She started to give me cannabis. My oncologist was puzzled because he couldn't find the cancer anymore.
All of the learning that we get comes from the Green Nurses Group, comes from their support, comes from their guidance. I trust everything that she says.
Simply meet people where they're at. The plant doesn't, stress to grow, so we don't stress to share it. We're healing people.
Cannabis has been used as a medicine for tens upon thousands of years. Here's the big message. Cannabis needs to be federally legal. We need to have laws that are the same across all 50 states that allow access to anyone and everyone who wants to utilize this powerful medicine.